The Japanese battleship was surrounded by the enemy, not expecting such resistance. She fought as viciously as she could given her limited capabilities. One American cruiser's attack would shift her fate entirely, setting her adrift and rudderless amid a massive battle. Welcome to Shipwreck Sunday. My name is Eleanor. Just a quick disclaimer for a younger audience before we dive in. This story may be disturbing to some, so viewer discretion is advised. Okay everyone, let's get into it. Hiei, named after Mount Hiei, was the second of the Imperial Japanese Navy's Kongo-class battlecruisers, a line of capital ships designed by British naval architect George Thurston. The class was ordered in 1910 in the Japanese Emergency Naval Expansion Bill, and her keel was laid down at Yokosuka Naval Arsenal on November 4, 1911, with most of the parts used in her construction being manufactured in Britain. She was launched on November 21, 1912, and fitting out started in December 1913. She was completed on August 4, 1914. Before we get too much further into her story, let's take a look at her specs. Hiei was a Kongo-class battlecruiser that displaced 36,600 long tons. She was 728 feet 4 inches long, had a beam of 101 feet 8 inches wide, and a draft of 31 feet 10 inches deep. As for propulsion, she was equipped with steam turbines which turned 4 propellers, giving her an average speed of 30 knots. Her complement averaged 1,360 officers and ratings. As for her armament and armor, we'll be looking at what she looked like after her 1937 to 1940 refit, though no, she'd gone through multiple iterations. As for her armament, she was equipped with 8 14-inch 45 caliber guns in 4 sets of twin mounts, 14 6-inch guns in single mounts, 8 5-inch dual-purpose guns in 4 sets of twin mounts, and 20 1-inch Type 96 anti-aircraft autocannons in 10 sets of twin mounts. As for armor, she had 8-inch belt armor midships, 3-inch belt armor on either end, 2.75-inch deck armor, bulkhead armor that ranged from 5 to 9 inches in the fore section of the ship and 6 to 8 inches in the aft section, 9-inch thick armor on her turrets, and 10-inch thick armor on her conning tower. She was armed and ready to go just in time for World War I, and she'd continue further after that. If you're enjoying this video, leave me a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and let me know down in the comments section below. Alright folks, let's look at her career. On August 4, 1914, Hiei was formally commissioned and assigned to the Sasebo Naval District, before being attached to the 3rd Battleship Division of the 1st Fleet 2 weeks later. On August 23, 1914, Japan declared war on the German Empire, occupying the former German colonies in Palau and in the Caroline, Marshall, and Mariana Islands. In October 1914, Hiei departed Sasebo alongside her sister ship Kongo to support the Imperial Japanese Army units in the siege of Tsingtao. But she was recalled on October 17th. On October 3, 1915, she and Kongo participated in the sinking of the target ship Imperator Nikolai I, a Russian pre-dreadnought captured in 1905 during the Russo-Japanese War that had subsequently served in the Japanese Navy under the name Iki as a coastal defense ship. In April of 1916, she patrolled the Chinese coast with her newly launched sisters Kirishima and Haruna. In 1917, to the end of World War I, Hiei remained primarily at Sasebo, patrolling the Chinese and Korean coasts with her sisters on several occasions. After the end of World War I, the Japanese Empire gained control of former German possessions in the Central Pacific per the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Hiei and her sisters became consistently less active after the war because of their warm relations with the British Empire and the United States. Other than a patrol with Haruna and Kirishima off the Chinese coast in March of 1919, Hiei remained in the Japanese home ports. On October 13, 1920, she was placed in reserve. Following the Great Kanto earthquake of September of 1923, Hiei and the other capital ships of the IJN assisted in rescue work until the end of the month. Hiei arrived at Kirei Naval Base on December 1, 1923 for a refit which increased the elevation of her main guns from 20 to 33 degrees and rebuilt her foremast. With the conclusion of World War I, the world powers wanted to halt any militarization that would re-escalate into war. Under the terms of the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922, the IJN was significantly reduced, leaving only the Issei-class, Kongo-class, and Yamashiro of the Fuso-class by the time it was fully implemented. No new capital ships were to be built until 1931, with none capable of exceeding 35,000 tons, and the Navy was kept to a strict ratio of 5/5/3 between the capital ships of the UK, US, and Japan. Given improvements wouldn't exceed 3,000 tons, existing capital ships were allowed to be upgraded with improved torpedo bulges and deck armor. In July of 1927, Prince Takamatsu, Emperor Hirohito's younger brother, was assigned to Hiei. From October to November 1927, the ship underwent a minor refit at Sasebo to accommodate 2 Yokosuka E-1Y float planes, though no launch catapults were added to her. On March 29, 1928, Hiei left Sasebo alongside Kongo and the battleships Nagato and Fuso to patrol off the Chusan archipelago before arriving in the company of Kongo in Port Arthur in April of 1928. In October 1929, she returned to Kirei in preparation for her demilitarization and reconstruction. To avoid having to scrap Hiei under the terms of the Washington Naval Treaty, the IJN decided to convert her into a demilitarized training ship for the time being. On October 15, 1929, she went into dry dock at Kirei Naval Arsenal so she could be converted. During this time, most of her guns and 9 of her boilers were removed, reducing her speed to 18 knots, and one of her 3 funnels was also removed. She was reclassified as a reserve ship at the end of November 1929, and on April 24, 1930, her reconstruction was halted due to the signing of the London Naval Treaty, which further restricted battleship construction and possession amongst the great naval powers, and preservation work began at Sasebo. Reconstruction wouldn't resume until July of 1931. In September of 1931, Japanese army units invaded the Chinese province of Manchuria, transforming it into the puppet state of Manchukuo. In December of 1932, Hiei was reassigned to the IJN's training squadron. On February 25th, the League of Nations determined that Japan had violated Chinese sovereignty and international law in the invasion of Manchuria. Refusing to accept the League's judgment, the Empire of Japan withdrew from the League the same day. This also signaled its exit from the Washington and London naval treaties, which removed all restrictions on the Imperial Japanese Navy's construction of capital ships. From the end of May 1933 to August 13th of that year, Hiei received upgrades that allowed her to perform regular duties for the Emperor, and she served at the Emperor's observation ship for the Imperial Naval Review 3 days later. From January to March of 1934, her No. 4 turret and ammunition magazine were refitted. In November of 1935, Hiei served as the Emperor's ship for his official visit to Kagoshima and Miyazaki prefectures. No longer bound by the restrictions of the Washington and London treaties, the IJN proceeded to reconstruct Hiei along the same lines as her sisters. She received 8 new oil-fired Kampon boilers and geared steam turbines, while her stern was lengthened by 26 feet to increase speed. Her aft 14-inch turret was refitted and fire control systems installed on all 4 main turrets. She was equipped with 2 Nakajima E-8N Dave and Kawanishi E-7K Alf reconnaissance float planes, and the elevation of her main and secondary guns was increased. For the planes, catapults and launch rails were refitted aft of turret 3. This is when her guns were updated and her superstructure was rebuilt as a prototype of the tower mast that would eventually be used on the Yamato-class, then still in the design phase. Hiei's armor was extensively upgraded at this time, though we already covered this earlier, but she was still less heavily armored than other Japanese battleships. However, Hiei was significantly faster. The reconstruction was declared complete on January 31st, 1940, and since she could reach speeds of 30.5 knots, she was reclassified as a fast battleship. She participated in the Imperial Fleet Review in October of 1940, where she was inspected by Emperor Hirohito, members of the royal family, Navy Minister Koshiro Okawa, and Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. In November, she was assigned to the 3rd Battleship Division of the 1st Fleet. On November 26, 1941, Hiei departed Hirokapu Bay in the Kiryu Islands, alongside Kirishima and 6 Japanese fast carriers of the 1st Air Fleet Striking Force. These 6 carriers were Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku. On December 7, 1941, aircraft from these 6 carriers attacked the U.S. Pacific Fleet at their home base of Pearl Harbor in Honolulu, Hawaii, sinking 4 U.S. Navy battleships and numerous other ships. Following the attack and the declaration of war by the United States, Hiei returned to Japan. Moving into 1942, on January 17, 1942, Hiei left Truk Lagoon Naval Base with the 3rd Battleship Division to support carrier operations against Rabaul and Kavieng. In February, she deployed alongside a force of carriers and destroyers in response to American raids on Japanese bases in the Gilbert and Marshall Islands. On March 1st, following carrier operations against Darwin, Australia, and Java in the Dutch East Indies, Hiei, Kirishima, and Shikuma, which were acting as escorts for the carrier task force, engaged the destroyer USS Edsall, with Hiei firing 210 14-inch and 76-inch shells. When the ships failed to score any hits, dive bombers from 3 of Admiral Nagumo's carriers immobilized the destroyer, which was then finished off by gunfire from the 3 ships. In April of 1942, Hiei and the 3rd Battleship Division joined 5 fleet carriers and 2 cruisers in a massive raid against British naval forces in the Indian Ocean. On April 5th, Easter Sunday, the Japanese fleet attacked the harbor at Colombo, Ceylon, while seaplanes from the cruiser Tone spotted 2 fleeing British cruisers, both of which were later sunk by aerial attack. On April 8th, Japanese carrier aircraft attacked the Royal Navy base at Trincomalee, only to find that all of the Admiral James Somerville's remaining warships in the British Eastern Fleet had withdrawn the previous night. Returning from the attack, a float plane from Hiei's sister ship Haruna spotted the aircraft carrier HMS Hermes alongside HMS Repulse, which were quickly sunk by a massive aerial attack. The fleet then returned to Japan, arriving at the home bases on April 23rd. On May 27, 1942, Hiei sortied with Kongo and the heavy cruisers Atago, Chokai, Miyoko, and Haguro as part of Admiral Nobutake Kondo's invasion force during the Battle of Midway. Following the disastrous loss of 4 of the combined fleet's fast carriers on June 4th, Kondo's force withdrew to Japan. In July, Hiei was dry docked for refits to her aircraft complement and the addition of single and twin 25mm gun mounts. In August, she escorted the Japanese carrier Shokaku during the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. In October, she sortied as part of Rear Admiral Abe's vanguard force and maintained distant cover as Kongo and Haruna nearly destroyed Henderson Field on Guadalcanal on the night of October 13th. From October 26th through October 30th, she and her sisters participated in the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. Despite the success, her luck would run out her next engagement. Thank you so much to our amazing YouTube members and patrons. If you'd like to have some awesome perks like episodes a full day in advance, join our YouTube memberships today. Okay, it's time to get into her final battle and her loss. On November 10, 1942, Hiei departed Truk alongside Kirishima and 11 destroyers, all under the command of Rear Admiral Abe, to shell American positions near Henderson Field in advance of a major convoy of Japanese troops. The force was spotted by U.S. Navy reconnaissance aircraft several days in advance. The U.S. deployed a force of 2 heavy cruisers, 3 light cruisers, and 8 destroyers under the command of Rear Admiral Callahan to meet the Japanese force in Iron Bottom Sound, formerly called Savo Sound. At 1:24 a.m. on November 13th, the Japanese force was detected at 28,000 yards out by the light cruiser USS Helena. Because Abe had not anticipated resistance, his battleship's main guns were loaded with anti-aircraft shells from bombarding Henderson Field. The initial salvos from the IJN battleships were thus not capable of dealing severe damage to the enemy's vital armor-protected hull, engines, and gun turrets. At 1:50, Hiei activated her searchlights and illuminated the light cruiser USS Atlanta, which along with several other American ships sank the destroyer Akatsuki. However, Hiei helped to avenge the destroyer when she fired a full broadside at the cruiser, hitting Atlanta with either 7 or all 8 14-inch shells fired, destroying her aft guns and setting her ablaze. The light cruiser Nagara and the destroyers Udachi and Harusame joined Hiei in the pounding and together hit Atlanta with some 35 shell hits, followed closely by a torpedo hit from the destroyer Ikatsuchi. The crippled and disabled Atlanta was left adrift and sank 2 hours later with the loss of 170 men, including Rear Admiral Norman Scott. However, the lead cluster of American destroyers, Cushing, Laffey, O'Bannon, and Sterrett, closed to point-blank range. Cushing fired a spread of torpedoes at Hiei which missed, only to be ambushed and sunk by the destroyers Yukikaze and Teruzuki. O'Bannon, however, was the first destroyer to successfully attack the Japanese flagship, smashing Hiei with multiple 5-inch shell hits that set her on fire and a pair of dud torpedo hits, before a rain squall blinded the destroyers and temporarily saved Hiei from further damage. In the squall, a set of lights emerged from the fog, much to the crew's surprise. This was the Laffy, and she inadvertently set herself on a collision course with Hiei and was speeding right toward her. Under an emergency speed boost and excellent maneuvering, Laffy narrowly avoided crashing into Hiei, coming so close that the battleship couldn't aim her guns low enough to fire upon Laffy. Laffy instead raked Hiei with shell fire before dashing off, scoring hits to her superstructure which injured Admiral Abe and killed Hiei's captain. O'Bannon and Sterrett then re-engaged Hiei and further peppered her in 5-inch gunfire and another pair of dud torpedoes. Hiei took no critical damage but suffered multiple fires setting off in the ship's unarmored portions. Hiei and Kirishima couldn't lower their guns enough to hit the destroyers, instead turning their attention to the American cruisers on scene, starting with USS San Francisco. Together, they crippled her and killed Admiral Callahan. San Francisco managed to hit Hiei with 17 armor-piercing 8-inch shells, 2 of which hit Hiei's steering gear room, flooding it with water, shorting out her power steering generators, and disabling her rudder, leaving her a sitting duck. Without these hits, Hiei would have survived the battle, but now it was too late for her. Instead, she engaged in a gunnery duel with the heavy cruiser USS Portland, hitting her with a pair of 14-inch shells that impacted her main belt. The majority of damage done to Portland came in the form of a torpedo hit from the Japanese destroyer Inazuma. Hiei was in turn damaged by 13 more 8-inch shells from Portland. The distance between Hiei and the American destroyers increased, and Hiei's crew realized they were in range of the main guns and opened fire. Hiei took revenge on the pesky Laffy and hit her with a pair of 14-inch shells, one exploding in her bridge and the other in her midship superstructure. However, the use of Type 3 AA shells meant neither shell caused significant damage, and Laffy was sunk primarily via a torpedo hit from the destroyer Yukikaze. Hiei instead earned more success when she noticed the Japanese destroyers Asakumo, Murasame, and Samidare blasting the destroyer USS Monson, on which they immediately scored hits, which destroyed her forward turrets and set her on fire. Hiei flanked Monson and hit her with 3 14-inch shells, sinking Monson. In total, Hiei had been struck by at least 85 American shells, including 30 8-inch shells from San Francisco and Portland, and up to 9 torpedo hits, at least some of which failed to detonate. Most critically were the shells San Francisco landed on her steering gear, which crippled her. With one of his battleships crippled, Abe ordered the remainder of the Japanese fleet to withdraw at 2 a.m. Kirishima attempted to tow Hiei to safety, but water flooded Hiei's steering compartments, jamming her rudder to starboard and forcing her to steer in circles. Throughout the morning of November 13th, Hiei was subjected to attack from American Army B-17 Flying Fortress bombers. At 11:30 a.m., at least 3 torpedoes from Grumman TBF Avenger torpedo bombers struck Hiei. After they refueled at Henderson Field, they returned and hit her 3 more times. The crew was then ordered to abandon ship, and her escorting destroyers scuttled her with torpedoes, finishing her off. Hiei sank sometime in the evening on November 13th with the loss of 188 of her crew, the first battleship lost by Japan during World War II. She was struck from the Navy list on December 20th, 1942. As for her wreckage, on February 6, 2019, Paul Allen's exploration ship RV Petrel announced the discovery of Hiei. According to Petrel, the main body of Hiei now lies upside down in 3,000 feet of water northwest of Savo Island in the Solomon Islands. As with her sister ship Kirishima, the bow of the ship is gone forward of the bridge due to a magazine explosion, and thus was the end of the second Kongo-class battlecruiser. A message in a bottle washed ashore at the mouth of the river, reading the terrible fate of an innocent stewardess. The ship she'd been aboard met a tragic fate, one shrouded in mystery for many years until her wreck would be uncovered years later. On next week's episode of Shipwreck Sunday, we get into the disappearance and sinking of SS Kamloops.